See how she just watched me? She has no idea what I'm doing. I haven't told her yet. Brad here from Piney Grove, and there's Deb and Bella in the background. But what we're doing today is changing the blades on the Kubota ZD1011. And the reason I backed the zero turn up on those 2x6 blocks there is because this mower has an integrated lift or jack in the front. And when you jack it up all the way, you can't get an impact up underneath to remove the mower blades. So we're going to show you how this thing lifts itself, take off the mower blades, put on the new ones, and also sharpen the old ones, and talk about that a little bit along the way. So this is the integrated lift system, and we've done a complete video on this to show how this works. You take out these pins that are captive right here and put them in the casters once you turn the casters the right way, and then you use that handle I just moved and turn it, and it lifts it up. First thing you got to do is set the parking brake though, and I've already done that. That caster's lined up already, and then this one goes sideways. All right, so the casters are lined up, and now I just turn it. All right, I'm going to turn this jack screw and scissor this front and lift the front up. I actually cleaned the threads really good on this jack screw and then greased it to make it easier to turn, and it didn't make it easier to turn. It actually made it harder to turn because that grease attracted grass, and then grass gets in the threads. So I don't know what the answer is here. But you can see it's going up pretty easily. I need to find like a socket for here and put my impact on here to turn it so I don't have to use this handle, and that's a real good idea. I just haven't gotten around to that yet. You'll know when it's all the way up because this part of the axle will hit, and there it goes. That's as high as it goes. So the size for Kubota zero turns is a 30 millimeter, and I bought this off of Amazon a couple weeks ago. I'll put a link down below, but I will recommend you don't get the deep socket. You get the shallow socket because you're going to see it's going to be hard to maneuver this big cordless impact wrench under here. But with it up on the boards, this impact will clear. When I put these blades on, I didn't use the impact wrench, so I should be able to loosen them with just my hand. And we'll talk about that in a minute why you don't want to put them on with an impact wrench. Now Kubota has the most frustrating system for changing blades, and I'll show you why. So the first thing you have to do is put this above the spindle, and this just protects the spindle, but it doesn't want to stay up there by itself. And then you got to put the blade up, and then under the blade there's two of these beveled washers, and they provide some spring pressure. And then there's this washer. It's got 5 edges to it, like a pentagon, I guess. And then here's the blade bolt, which again is 30 millimeter, but it's real skinny in the center. So you can see how that would be easy to shear off. But this goes against the bolt head, and then these spring washers go like that, cup up like that. And they provide spring pressure against the blade, because if you don't have that spring pressure, the blade will actually spin if it's over tightened. And that's what happens with people putting these on with impact wrenches, is that they crush these spring washers, and then the blade won't stay tight. So when I put the blade back on, I just use a ratchet rather than an impact. But let's take a look at these blades and show you how much wear they get with just a few acres of mowing. The way a side discharge zero turn mower works is all the grass that starts over here has to get all the way to the chute over there. So this blade on this side cuts the least. This only cuts grass once. The middle blade takes the grass from this blade, chops it up, and sends it to the third blade, and the third blade gets all the wear, and I think we'll be able to see a difference. They start to get a hook, and I think I've already swapped these blades around, but you should be able to see that it starts to get a hook right here, and that blade on the end is where that hook gets the worst. So this is the position of the blades as I took them off, and that one gets the most wear because it sees the most grass as it moves across the mower deck. That one gets the least amount of wear. But you'll see that this blade here is actually the most worn blade because I've already swapped them. So that one right there and that one right there have the least amount of wear, and this one has the most. Hopefully the camera picks it up, but what happens is they start to get rounded and they don't have a good edge. Now you don't want too sharp of an edge because then it wears down quickly, but once it gets rounded, it doesn't cut as clean. And the type of grass we have out here is Bahia grass or Bahia grass. It's real coarse grass, and it's got a lot of stems in it for making hay, and it doesn't take long to wear down these blades. So these blades were replaced at 50 hours on this mower. We bought it with 65 hours, and I think it has like 75 hours on it now, something like that. So there's not a lot of use on these blades, but we're starting to tell that these blades won't last but about 1 season for us. So we're going to put on these new blades now, show you how that's done, and then sharpen these blades and talk about different ways to sharpen them. I'm going to put this in the right configuration, which is sharp side down. I'm going to put up this little cup right here that we talked about that protects the spindle. But you can see that doesn't stay up there. You could probably put a little grease or something in here to make it stay, but I don't want to do that. It's got a little witness hole here. I guess that's to see if the spindle starts leaking. Then the blade goes up. And once the blade goes up, you can put the bolt in with the 3 washers. The 3 washers are the 2 spring washers we talked about, or the 2 cupped washers, and then the one that looks like it has a nut in the center of it. So once you get it up here, holding it up with my knee, got to make sure the spring washers go up there. Then you got to turn the washer that has the cutouts for that shaft and hold that while you use your other hand and turn. It's just not easy to put on. We've got a ride mower for the house. We've got a finish mower. And of course we've got brush hogs. And this is probably the hardest thing to change the blades on, or at least to get this washer configuration correct. Because if you don't get it correct, it won't tighten. This part here is the most crucial part, and that's to make sure that this last washer, this washer right here that has this configuration in the center, and that has to go over top of the end of that spindle shaft. And you got to make sure it doesn't hang up at all. So I think I got this one. Then for tightening, I'm sure there's a torque value, but I just go tight with this ratchet, and that keeps the blade from spinning on the shaft. I've heard some really bad stories about people using an impact for this process, so I'd recommend you either get a torque wrench or rely on the torque that you can apply with your hand. I was at the Kubota dealer, and this guy that does a lot of lawn mowing came up to me because I was talking about these blades with the salesman there, or with the parts guy, and we were talking about tightening that bolt, and he goes, yeah, he goes, don't ever use the impact. He goes, get a wrench, and then you just go, eh. He goes, and then it's tight, it's good enough. So whatever means, that's what you need to do. Tighten it to eh. We talked about the crush washers, and here they are right here. I bought new ones just in case I needed them. I don't know if you can see, but they got a slight conical shape to them, and that little bit of spring is what keeps the blade tight up underneath that blade bolt. They're not very expensive, so I bought a complete set, but I'm going to keep using these other ones as long as I see that they still have some concave to them. If I start noticing that they're flat, or if the blades start slipping, then I'll change them out. I'm one of those guys that likes to get the most that they can out of something before they throw it out. As I go through this process, I'm thinking, since I don't have any kind of lift that I can put things on to work on them without laying on my back, then maybe I get like some lawnmower ramps or something, and then drive it up on the lawnmower ramps and work on it that way. I don't know, what do you guys think? Put a comment down below. How do you change the blades on your zero turn? Is there an easier way than what you're seeing here? You'd think there'd have to be. And one thing I do is try not to put the blades tip to tip. And I know that the belt can slip and change the way you set the blades, but I just never put them tip to tip. All right, one more left. All 3 blades are on, and now it's time to lower this deck. I don't know how much a dealer would charge, or at least I don't know how much time they would charge, but it seems like everything at a dealer is at least an hour. So the blades were 60 bucks or $68 maybe, and an hour of labor at my Kubota dealer, I think it's pushing $200. It might be $199 or $190. So let's just say it's $100. We saved $100 by doing this ourselves. One thing we're going to do with all our mowers is get 2 sets of blades, and that way you always have a sharp one if you don't have time to sharpen, or let's say you hit something and bend one, then you're out of commission for mowing. Pins out, the casters, put them back in here for storage. I've got 2 different wheels that I use to sharpen blades, and this is just a regular grinding wheel. And that works real well on the brush hog, but a lot of folks are saying that takes off too much metal and wears your blades out too quickly. So I've got one of these sanding disc wheels, and we're going to give that a try on the blades first. I don't know if that's going to remove enough metal to make it sharp enough for me, but we're going to give it a shot. The way I like to sharpen blades is put them on something solid and then clamp them. So I've got this sawhorse and a little short piece of 2x4. Just take this clamp and hold that blade nice and steady while I work on that edge. Most important thing to keep in mind here is you want to maintain that angle. If the angle is like that, you don't want the angle like this or like that. The more you make this longer, the sharper that edge will be, but then also the weaker that edge will be. So what we're trying to do is just remove enough material to make that sharp again. And this seems to do better than a grinder. A grinder already would have removed way more material. I just don't know how long this thing will last. Most of your cutting is done out here on the tip, and you can see the hook that started on this blade. They used to be the same diameter or the same length all the way across here. These things are pretty expensive, so I don't know if it's worth it to save money on a blade to burn through one of these, but we'll see. It's getting sharper. Still see it's rounded right there. I got to take a fair bit of metal off there. It's plenty sharp right here. And what you can do is you can cut this whole blade back to here, but that would remove a whole bunch of metal. So I'm just going to sharpen it and take out this roundness, and eventually that roundness will come back to here, and then you'll have to replace that blade. I switched back over to a regular grinding wheel. I actually put a new one on here so I could get that angle better. But using that sanding disc was just taking too long. It was wearing out the sanding disc, and I would have more invested in sanding disc than it would cost to put a new set of blades on this. So I'm going to stick with the grinder. I know it removes more metal, but it's what works for me. And that's what everyone has to do out there, is choose what works best for them, either financially or time-wise. And I think the grinder is the best tool for me. So I quickly restored that edge right there with the full grinding wheel, and I will say that probably the best thing to do now would be to hit it with that sanding disc to get that real shiny and smooth and get that final sharpness on it. But this right here worked a lot better than that sanding disc when you have a rough blade. We're going to do this one completely with the full grinding wheel. I've already got that section sharp enough. I got to work on this right here. I got all 3 blades sharpened. That's 6 edges, and I used the grinder on all of them. I put the sanding disc away, and I did find I was grinding a bit more metal, but that's the only way I could get these sharp. If I'd used that sanding disc, I would have wore out the sanding disc before I sharpened those 3 blades. But one thing sharpening these blades has definitely taught us out here at Piney Grove is that we need a blade strategy, and it's got to be more than just an extra set of blades to swap. We've got to look at either hardening that tip or getting some hardening blades. So look forward to those type of videos in the future, because we got to figure this out. It's just too expensive to buy these regular blades that wear out so quick. The blades on the zero turn and also the blades on the finish mower I'm getting ready to sharpen have only mowed about 5 acres, since they were new. So we're not getting a lot of life out of these blades. And if you look behind me, you'll see that has to be mowed weekly. We can't afford a new set of blades, let's say, every 3 weeks or so. But leave your comments down below. What do you guys do for a blade strategy out on your place? That's going to do it for today's video, folks. We'll put a couple links up here to some of our other videos. And remember, YouTube likes it when you watch one of our videos in its entirety and then watch another one. It sends YouTube a signal to further distribute our videos. But until next time, y'all take care out there. And remember, life's short, tractor hard.